Welcome, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for joining us for our 2025 Outlook Website Design Trends. I'm your host, Jim Brophy, Group Director of Digital here at Northwoods. It's that time of year when just about every agency or marketing firm publishes their thoughts on trends and/or best practices for the coming year. At Northwoods, this is our 16th edition of Design Trends to keep an eye on and embrace in the next 12 months or so. In addition to trends you might want to consider, we also make sure to include trends or design features to avoid for a variety of reasons, which we'll cover. This morning, we will also provide some tips and best practices on how to develop sound UX design and why good UX design never goes out of style. Our trail guide this morning is our UX practice lead, Jenna Dean. Jenna has been with Northwoods now for over 9 years. Jenna listens closely to understand clients' goals and uncover solutions for their marketing and design challenges. She specializes in developing wireframes and prototypes with a strong focus on UX UI and collaborates with Northwoods UX strategists to ensure that user research guides the design process. Jenna has a wealth of experience designing for data and creates stunning page layouts that showcase complex information in a digestible format. Away from Northwoods, Jenna enjoys downhill skiing, and her fuel of choice is Dr. Pepper. And be on the lookout for her cats Viper, Saber, and Flash, who might just make an unscheduled guest appearance this morning. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions at any time, and we will answer as many as we can during our Q&A session immediately following the presentation. Also, please feel free to use chat to connect with our team and other attendees or share real-time feedback with Jenna using the reactions button in the bottom toolbar. We will also address questions we receive from folks when registering for today's class, time permitting. Additionally, we'll also be sending out a recording of today's webinar in the next few days, so you'll be able to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jenna.
All right. Thank you, Jim. So I do have a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive right away into our first trend. Okay. So our first design trend is called Minimalist Maximalism. This trend is all about finding the perfect balance between two very distinct styles, maximalism and minimalism. So let's start with maximalism. So in website design, that's all about boldness, creativity, and just being a little extra. So maximalist websites often use like striking color palettes, dramatic fonts, and overlapping elements. So the goal is really to capture the attention and create just like a memorable impression by making the site feel dynamic and just full of personality. It's the exact opposite of minimal, where minimalism strips away everything deemed unnecessary. So how do we really bring these two design styles together? Well, to accomplish this trend, you have to take that bold, dramatic flair of maximalism and blend them with the clean layouts of minimalism. So it's really just like a hybrid approach that delivers both personality and clarity. So we are going to take a closer look at a few examples to explain this a little better. So let me just close this out. So Lush's website combines really vibrant colors, very bold and strong imagery, and just playful typography with a very simple and clean layout. So the striking bold graphics here and fonts are really what give this website that big personality. But when you break down the design, it's literally just large images stacked on top of one another with a bit of navigation here as well as over here. So it's actually a really simple design that seems more complex and intricate because of all of this really vibrant content. So let's talk about image size. So obviously that's a top concern with a design like this. So I'm actually going to use Chrome's Lighthouse tool, which is just an open source automated auditing tool that helps developers like evaluate and improve the overall quality of their website. So you can see here that for accessibility, best practices, and SEO, they have perfect scores, but there is a little bit of performance concern. So if we scroll down here, we can see that images were larger than their displayed size and avoid an excessive DOM size. Basically, that's just referring to keeping the document object model, the structure of HTML elements on your page as small and efficient as possible. And here, where the images are larger than their displayed size, you can get a little bit more information here, where the display dimension 1903 by 1030. I mean, it's pretty close to the actual dimensions in 1920, so it's not significantly off, but it is a little bit bigger. One thing I will say is that Chrome Lighthouse is an excellent starting point, but I would recommend exploring your Google Analytics account to identify whether performance issues are truly affecting your user experience. So a minor performance delay might not be a significant concern for your users. For instance, if they're waiting 3 seconds for a page to load instead of 2, that could be acceptable. So, take a look at this just to get a better understanding, but really dive into your analytics to see how or if it is even affecting your users at all. Okay, so I want to talk about really quickly how to optimize your images for websites since they are super important to your design. So first, choose the right file format. They're really ideal for photos or images that have gradients. They balance quality and file size really well. PNGs are used for images that have transparency or sharp detail. They are typically a larger file size than JPEGs, so leverage JPEGs more when you can, but PNGs are there when you need them. And then SVGs are best for logos, icons, and simple graphics since it's resolution independent and they're very lightweight. Try to resize your images as best you can for the appropriate dimensions. Use CSS for simple graphics, and then always just test and monitor the performance of your website to make sure you're keeping your users happy. Okay, another example that leverages a similar layout to the Lush example, but we have a lot of more movement here in videos. The balance of simplicity and bold elements here really evokes like a premium feel, aligning with that high-end nature of their product line. So by combining the simplicity of minimalism with the expressive power of maximalism here, Sussex Taps is really creating a visually captivating yet very highly functional experience. But now instead of imagery, we're adding a lot of videos. So again, with this design trend, we would need to make sure that we are optimizing the large imagery and videos as effectively as possible. So same performance, a little bit less for accessibility and SEO, but same performance score that we saw with Lush with similar issues. So again, just quick notes on how to optimize videos for your website is choose the right video format. So use modern formats like MP4 or WebM for high quality and efficient compression. MP4 actually is just probably widely supported and ideal for most use cases. And then you can use compression tools like Handbrakes to reduce file size without any significant quality loss. And then just enable lazy loading, which defers the video loading until it's visible in the user. There is a little bit of a difference between a background video and an informative video. So background videos, you just want to focus on keeping them more lightweight and low resolution. You don't need like a high HD video on your website. So just keep those a little bit more performance friendly. And the informative videos, those are the ones that have sound that you're giving your users direction or guidance and they're listening and taking in information. So prioritize the quality there, user engagement, and just keep it accessible. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the second design trend, which is dynamic scrolling. So dynamic scrolling is actually one of my favorite trends. It basically is having some sort of movement or behavior triggered as a user scrolls down the page. So this creates a really immersive and engaging browsing experience. And this Hivetown example is such a fun example of what you can do with dynamic scrolling. So immediately when we get to this page, you see a lot of movement here in the background with the clouds and the bees, and we have this Hivetown Beyond the Ordinary drink can here. And as soon as I start strolling on the page, the can comes with me. And what's really nice is the content here is laid out so the can doesn't cover it over. If this was just a static screenshot, you wouldn't even know that the can actually scrolled down from the top. So it's actually a really slick experience that still works really well with the content that's surrounding it. And then as we scroll down, it kind of shrinks a little bit and then it finds its home and then it doesn't scroll with us for the rest of the page. And you can see that we have some other animations that are triggered as I scroll down the page, such as the parallax scrolling here, which is done really nicely. And then we have content kind of moving a little bit, all triggered as I'm scrolling down the page. So this interactive nature really keeps users intrigued because as they're scrolling, they're very interested in what's going to happen next, which is reducing the bounce rate and just really increasing the time they're spending on your site. It transforms that passive browsing into a really active discovery process, which is really fun. We're going to look at Slack now, the way to use dynamic scrolling that's a little more simplistic, yet just as effective. So scroll triggered animations can draw attention to critical calls to actions. It can highlight products or services, ensuring that they're not overlooked. And Slack does a really great job of highlighting their product with dynamic scrolling. So here we have a little bit of content on collaboration, and this GIF here is showing their software and the collaboration component of it. And then as we scroll down, the content changes to project management, and so does this GIF here, where it now focuses on the project management side of their software. And the change is actually kind of subtle, which is why they probably changed the color of the shape behind it to really flag to the user that something happened. But yeah, as we're scrolling up and down the page, this GIF content here is really changing to match the content next to it, which is a really nice way to showcase the content and enhance it with the visual. All right. And finally, we have another example of how dynamic scrolling is used to keep the user engaged while inviting them to scroll further down the page. So as the user moves down this page, this line fills in with color and the graphics sort of fade in as well, which allows the users to really interact with your content in a fun way, and it keeps them engaged with your site. So in general, dynamic scrolling aligns with users desiring just that engaging and visual rich website experience, and it merges that functionality with storytelling, making websites both practical and fun, which is always good for user experience. All right, the next design trend I have here is about shapes. This design trend approach really leverages bold, colorful shapes to create that visual interest and guide the user's attention without really overwhelming the layout. So this trend gives websites a touch of flair while creating a balance between that simplicity and creativity. So by using bright shapes, websites can really keep interfaces clean while injecting that energy and personality into their site's design. So let's take a closer look at how Evernote uses these bright shapes. So this design has a sense of creativity and innovation, which appeals to more of a modern audience, which aligns with their brand well. It makes them appear approachable and forward-thinking. Another added benefit is the flexibility across devices. These shapes are often vector-based, which ensures that they scale beautifully across devices, maintaining the visual quality on desktops and mobile screens. Okay, here is another example by Figma. So they use a lot of shapes to enhance their visual hierarchy. So bright shapes naturally draw the eye and can be strategically placed to highlight key areas like calls to actions and navigation menus even, or essential content. So when we actually scroll all the way down here to their call to action, you can see they have a lot of bright bold shapes that are drawing attention to this dark call to action, which is a nice contrast. And then when I hover over it, you can actually see all of the shapes move, which is a little bit fun as well. These unique, vibrant visuals really make this website stand out, really helping the users remember their brand or product even after they leave this page. So it even allows users to recognize them on platforms like social media. So if we go to like their Facebook account here, you can see, yep, we have those bright colors all in their posts, some shapes here, and it's just immediately recognizable to their website and their brand. Okay, this last example I just want to go over quick is from Calendly. These shapes also move around a little more here, which helps the design from feeling too static. It makes the website feel more welcoming and less sterile while maintaining that clean interface. You can see there's plenty of white space, so that pop of color fits the area really well without being super overwhelming. But you do want to make sure that your vector elements are not too abstract or overly complex because they can distract your users from important content or make the interface harder to navigate. However, when we use like thoughtfully bright vector shapes, it can really enhance the user engagement, create visual cohesive experience, and just really guide the user's attention to key areas. All right, so the fourth trend here we've seen in all the other examples that I provided, but it's really just adding movement to your design. I always say that one of the greatest benefits of a website or digital media is the ability to add movement. It's really a giant advantage over print design, so we should definitely take advantage of that. It really makes interfaces feel more alive and enhances that user engagement. So this concept really involves the use of subtle animations. You can use videos, micro interactions to really guide that user's attention and create that dynamic user experience that really elevates your design storytelling. So Duolingo here does a great job of creating these engaging animations. Let me open that up here that really guide users through their learning language lessons. So immediately, nice clean white space here, fun, playful graphic with lots of colors, and we can see a little bit of animation here. And then as I'm scrolling down, you can see that we have this content here that matches these graphics that are drawing attention with their movement. And you'll notice that this guy's moving up here, but this graphic isn't moving down here until I scroll a little bit further. And then this one stops moving. So I'm sure they did that to enhance their website's performance, which was really smart. So you can see as we scroll down, the graphics start to move. I really like this one because it's talking about the different paces you can take their classes at. You can go really fast or take it slow. And then this is a little bit of dynamic scrolling, a little playful fun here, showing that you can definitely add more trends to your website than just focusing on one. These fun graphics just jumping through these screens here. And as we scroll down, very similar graphics, similar movement. So many people think that these animations are like automatically created through coding, but there are actually a lot of tools out there that can help create these files. So I haven't vetted all of the ones that I'm showing here on the screen, but I found these as some of the more recommended ones online. So it looks like when I inspect the Duolingo example, when I inspected it a little bit more closely, that they were actually using Lottie file animations, which you can see here as an example. So they use those to help create those animations that we just looked at. Okay, so now Duolingo incorporated movement in all of their images, but it's okay to add movement more subtly without committing to it with every single piece that you have. So let's take a closer look at Podbean here that has a video right away, which is a classic way to add a little bit of movement to your site's design. But unlike Duolingo, they don't really rely on vector art for everything. They use photographs, but they do find clever little ways to add those more subtle animations and movements to their graphics, which you can see here with the sound wave. So the whole graphic's not moving, it's just a little piece of, or a little component of it that is. And then here you can see we have pulsating icons that kind of are intermixed with their photography, which is another smart way to add that movement. And then down here, I think this image just changes out. As we scroll down, things flow in. We have some sliders. Here, this background fades in really nicely. And then one of my favorite ones that they have is right here, where we see these hearts kind of coming from the phone. So again, just a really clever way of kind of intermixing that vector artwork with photography to create that movement. This restraint use of motion really complements the images, creating like a sophisticated and dynamic user experience without adding too much visual noise. Okay, and the last trend I want to go over is immersive branding. So immersive branding really focuses on creating deeply engaging, like all-encompassing digital experiences that reflect a brand's identity in every interaction and visual element possible. So this approach often uses a mix of storytelling, interactive features, and sensory design elements like everything we just saw, animations, videos, and it even uses thoughtful typography to immerse users into like a branded world. So the goal is to make the users feel as though they're stepping into your brand's universe and generating that stronger emotional connection with your brand. So let's check out this website by 5 Pathways Financial to see what this can look like. And it's immediately interesting. So we have all these custom graphics design that even carries into their chat feature down here with some movement. So you can chat with Angie down there. The artwork is a blend of like abstract digital art and like organic nature inspired visuals. So the color palette is really like grounded and earthy tones such as green, blues, and soft neutrals that kind of evokes that like connection to nature. And what I really like about this is obviously that style is carried throughout, but they also throw in some like photography and real imagery every now and then. You can kind of see that here, but we have this play button that brings it back to their brand. And then when we scroll, we can see all this beautiful cohesive artwork. But then when we scroll a little bit further down to their news section, we have some real photography here, which is fine because the color palettes are very consistent. And then we can see they added this little line around the image that kind of ties it back to their brand as well. And then when we click through to some of their interior pages, you can see that it wasn't just the home page. They made sure to carry that brand throughout the whole site. And we have these fun button styles that seem to like push in when you hover over it. And then even these arrows right here are just really on brand. So all these little details can really just enhance the overall look and feel of your site. Another strong example with very striking graphics. It's very abstract, mixing black and white photos with like bold colors and shapes. So we have some squiggle lines that we see here and then again here. And what's really fun is they bring that same design to their button. So again, just kind of incorporating these little brand details as much as they can throughout the site. And users are just really more likely to remember a brand after interacting with such a distinctive design. So this leads to better brand recall and standing out more in competitive markets. So here you can see when you hover over these images, it changes them from casual to professional, and the squiggle line grows, so that's kind of fun as well. Interactive features like this really keep users engaged longer, reducing those bounce rates and encouraging that exploration. So users are just curious to know what's going to happen next and are very engaged with your content. So brands that adopt immersive web design are seen as just forward-thinking and innovative, and they really apply or appeal to those tech-savvy users. Okay. And quickly, I'm just going to go over one more example that I just really loved when I saw it. I'm just going to scroll through it quickly. It has a strong color palette, and they carried it over into this like artistic style of their imagery, which you can see here on Hover as well. So a well-crafted brand can really translate into a website design that elevates the brand's perceived quality, making its product or service just feel more premium, established, or even reputable. So immersive branding, it's not really just about the aesthetics either. It's really about creating that meaningful connection that makes users feel part of your brand story. So this trend will definitely set brands apart, especially when it's such a crowded landscape. Okay, so now I just want to quickly go over things to watch out for and just be aware of. So AI technologies are all the rage right now, but we have to be smart with how we take advantage of that. So for example, here we're seeing a mixture of 3 different types of photos. So one's a stock photo, one was generated by AI, and one's a photo that was taken by a client and actually provided to us. So we're going to put up a poll right now, and I'm going to have you guys guess which one you think was generated by AI. So it's A, B, or C. AI generated photos can be created quickly, but they can sometimes feel very generic or artificial, which might not resonate well with audiences seeking that genuine connection with the brand or product. So I guess we'll let it run for a little bit. Okay, the results are in, and we have most people guessing A, one or a couple guessing B, C, and the correct answer is A. So yeah, good job, everybody. It was pretty easy to see if you took a really close look. So one thing I've noticed with AI is that it can have a hard time with faces, especially making eyes look natural. Hands and sometimes clothes also get a little bit wonky. So it's really hard for AI the more people there are in the images. So this image does have some obvious issues when you take a closer look, which I've tried to highlight here for you. So you just want to make sure to carefully review any AI generated images, even the background. It can be really easy to get distracted by focal points of the imagery, but sometimes those backgrounds just don't make sense either. So you really want to investigate and make sure that the photo looks good and doesn't have anything a little bit off about it. AI can work really well with like more of a digital art approach or really anything that isn't trying to mimic a realistic photo, though I'm sure that's going to change over time. But you just also need to be aware of the legal concerns while using AI generated imagery. So key issues include copyright and ownership concerns, leaving AI generated works in a little bit of a gray area. So licensing terms of AI tools vary, so reviewing the platform's policies is really critical to ensuring that you can use it commercially. Some sources already do take steps to ensure that their AI images are okay to use. For example, AI generated images from Adobe stock are okay to use because Adobe really enforces that strict guidelines to ensure legal and ethical compliance. So their rigorous oversight does make Adobe stock a more of a trustworthy source for legally safe and high quality generated AI imagery. And you can see here when you're searching for images through Adobe Stock Photography, they actually have this generated AI section where you can say, I only want to look at generative AI images or I don't want to look at them. And even here, you can kind of see some things look a little off still. So you just have to be careful regardless of where you're getting these photos from. Another thing I want to talk about is custom cursors. So custom cursors that deviate too much from the default arrow can confuse users, especially if they're not intuitive or they hinder interaction by hiding the pointer's like actual position, making it less precise than what we usually have with an arrow. So here you can see when I'm moving my cursor around, it's kind of a fun little animation. And then when I hover over this button here, it turns into a circle. So it doesn't feel as precise as an arrow, but the buttons within this design are pretty big, so it kind of still works. But users might struggle to understand how to interact with the site and have to think about what the cursor's hover state is, and they just have to relearn something that should be relatively intuitive. And then I do find that custom cursors break all the time. So like this example here, you can see my cursor up in the browser window, but as soon as I move it down to the content, I promise you it's there, but I can't see it. You can't see it. It's either very subtle or it's just broken. And sometimes hover states break as well, so then they don't always indicate what's clickable or not, causing just a lot of unnecessary confusion. So there's probably a use case for custom cursors, but I'm guessing it's very rare, where it's actually going to enhance the user experience. And then you don't want to be clever with your navigation. That's not really where I tend to focus my creative energy. Making the navigation hard to see on desktops really forces users to work harder to find it, and navigating your website is extremely important. So just knowing where it is right away is very helpful, and it can be annoying when a user has to look for it a little bit harder. So it reduces that discoverability and can add a little bit of friction to that experience. So here you immediately look up here, you don't see it. You might click on this, which is their logo. You might click on here, but it's this plus sign. So you might have seen that right away, but I can see this being a little bit harder for users who might not have the best vision to see pretty clearly, since it's blended in a little bit more to the background imagery here than what you would typically see in the navigation at the top of the page. And then here's another example where the navigation is not at the top, and you might kind of be like, oh, maybe there isn't any, and you scroll. It does say explore more here, but that might just mean with the whole website. This is actually the navigation, but a few people or a lot of users might just think that's part of the heading and part of the content and not understand that it's a clickable element. So again, you're just making your users work a little bit harder than they probably want to find your navigation. Last thing I want to talk about here is sliders. So while common, image sliders and carousels often reduce usability because users simply don't interact with them, and it can add unnecessarily load time to your website for something that's not even being heavily used. So we are often recommending to our clients to stay away from sliders. There's a lot of research showing website users have something called banner blindness, and they often ignore rotating banners because they are just very commonly used in web design today. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the best practices to consider. So first, let's get to know your users. The best place to start a website design project is by learning more about your users. User-first approach really puts the audience's needs, goals, and pain points at the heart of every design decision that you make. And by focusing on what serves the user best, you're creating a more intuitive and sufficient experience that keeps your visitors engaged and just overall happy, which is really important. So you want to do stuff like avoid letting your internal politics hurt your user experience. So organizing your website based on your internal structures or preferences and saying things like, this is how we organize things internally, might not make sense to your users. So remember, what works for your team may not work for your audience. And all of this can be discovered by starting out with user research. And then images can make or break your design. So the AirPods website, I'll open it here, is an awesome website really great design, but they did take a ton of time and investments into their graphics. So here we have a really strong, powerful video of a silhouette, really strong, bold colors in the background here. And when we scroll down, we have a lot of really chic product imagery. And then again, we have this wonderful silhouette here that might be a still from the video that we saw at the top. What's really great about it is there's room for content, and her silhouette's like framing that content even more. So there's just a lot of smart design decisions in here based on the very heavily consideration of the imagery. So here's just a quick screen grab from the AirPod site. It's very simple, right? We just have a heading, a little bit of content, and then a very simple but really nice product image. So if we take that exact same look, but we put some not so great photography in there, the website doesn't look chic anymore. The vibe, the tone of it is completely changed. So getting your photography right is crucial to the design, and images should not be added. They should be added thoughtfully instead of haphazardly to your site. So here, again, another screen grab from the AirPod site, just a beautiful graphic with nice room for the content. It's very striking. So if we take that same concept, but we put in a stock photo, it's kind of blurry. I had to change the color of the font because the image was too white. There isn't any room for content. So I just can't tell you how many times people wish to replicate the Apple or the Patagonia website, but you really have to take the time to invest in your imagery to support that kind of design. So strong call to actions. This is something that never goes out of style. It's something you should always be doing for your websites. You should use them to guide your users through your website to evoke that action. So this is more than just adding contact us, contact us, contact us everywhere on your website. You need to be more thoughtful and guide them through your website until they're ready to reach out to you. So another example that I want to look at is this SRS, is their membership page. So users will go here when they're ready to renew or even just start a membership with them. And you'll notice for the users that know right away, yep, I'm going to the membership page, I'm going to become a member, we have this call to action right at the top of the page. But some users might want to learn a little bit more about, well, what are the benefits of becoming a member? So when you scroll down, you get those benefits here, so you really understand a little bit more about what that membership entails. And then instead of having to scroll back to the top, there's that button right here to catch them and make it as easy as possible when they're ready to convert, because it's such an important conversion. But for those users that are still not convinced and need to learn a little bit more about the different membership types, we have this tabbed approach here that gives them additional information on those membership types. And then we add the Apply Today button here at the bottom as well. It might feel redundant, but no users navigate a website the same way. So you just want to make sure you're making it as easy as possible and catching them at the right time, no matter where they are in their journey. So now let's take a look at Aether here. Now this website has a very bold color palette. So we need to find a different way to make the calls to action stand out. So instead of relying on color alone, we added this like circuit pattern here, which is pretty cool because it almost seems to point at the contact, drawing the user's eye to that copy. And then if we scroll back to the top of the page here and we go to the leadership section and we have information on their leaders, instead of saying contact us as the only call to action on the site, we're actually guiding them to explore the content further here, predicting that that's where the user would want to go next through the data. So here they can learn more about Aether after getting to know the leaders a little bit more. And then we do have the contact us right in the footer, always readily available to the users that are ready to start working with them. Okay, white space, always important. So white space is really crucial to giving your content just that room it needs to breathe and making the design feel very balanced and polished. So when done correctly, white space makes it easier for users to scan through your content as well as just digest whatever message you're trying to give them. You want to structure your content for quick reading by using clear headings, short paragraphs, and lists so users can quickly find any key information they need. And lastly, let's not ignore our footers. So footers are a critical part of a website design because they serve as like a safety net for users who reach the bottom of a page without finding the information they needed. So if a user has scrolled all the way down, it often indicates that they didn't find the content that they wanted. So this makes your footer like the last opportunity to guide them effectively. So if we take a look here at metal text footer, You'll see it even includes a search bar right there in the footer to allow users to, instead of having to scroll to the top or try again on another page, they're able to conduct their search right here to better find what they're looking for. And it even includes resources, links, and contact information. So if we go to this VOBEV example, what's really nice about their footer, if I scroll down here, is that we included a form right there in the footer, so they don't even have to go to a separate page to reach out. It is right there. And then we have important information like contact, phone number, address, social media icons. This is all stuff that people expect to find in the footer, so just make sure you put it there. So ultimately, when designing your website, it's essential to prioritize both your users and your brand. So the design choices you make should align with your brand identity while engaging your audience. So for example, while bright, bold shapes might work well for some brands, they might feel a little bit out of place or overwhelming for others. So instead, just consider incorporating more subtle shapes or design elements that complement your brand's tone and enhance its visual appeal without straying too far from your core identity. So with that in mind, I do have one last poll for you. And it is, what do you find the most challenging about maintaining your design? Is it keeping that imagery consistent? Is it adapting new content to fit the design you already have? Is it the lack of strong brand identity, limited time or resources, no in-house design team, too many content editors leading to a lot of inconsistencies within your design, or just budget constraints? And if I didn't guess what it was, please feel free to share it in the chat so we can see what everyone's facing here when it comes to maintaining the integrity of your design. So we'll give it a little bit of time here. All right, keeping imagery consistent, but the most one was limited time or resources, which I'm not surprised about because usually everybody has different jobs and their website is kind of just like an add-on to what they need to focus on, which is why we're here to help too. Yeah, wow, lots of different concerns. So with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Jim.
Thank you very much, Jenna. A really thorough tour there of some great trends and best practices. We do have a couple of questions, and we still have time for folks to submit a question if you'd like. We've got several to get through here, so go ahead and submit one if you have a question. Came in while you were speaking, and this is a great one. So what resources do you use to find all these cool websites?
It's not easy. I pretty much know the trends that I want to talk about, and then I do spend a lot of time just scouring the internet trying to find examples that go with it. But it's hard because these are trends that you're predicting are going to happen in the future, and you just have to find people that were already ahead of the curve. So I can't say there's an easy way to do that. I just kind of poke around and look at brands that I'm aware of, and then just kind of get into a wormhole with my Google searches. So
Fair.
no good answer.
No, that works. I mean, all of our practitioners do research, as I'm sure everybody on the call does too. So you just have to have the time to do that. The next question came in back to the beginning of your webinar. You were talking about dynamic scrolling. So the question is, how does dynamic scrolling perform on mobile, or is it primarily a desktop solution?
Yeah, it's stronger on desktop. I would definitely pull it back on mobile. I think there's still things you can do in mobile to adapt and kind of incorporate it a little bit, but definitely performance is more important on mobile than being too flashy. So a lot of the time that is an area where you pull back a little bit, but there might be different little tricks you can do that still make it feel engaging without hurting that performance time too much.
Okay. Excellent, thanks. This question was submitted ahead of time. You touched on colors a little bit, and we could give in fact, we do give entire webinars around website accessibility and design. But the question is, what will be the biggest challenges with website design related to accessibility? So I'll take that one. There are several aspects to this, and some of it is, tied into your strategy, your target audience, where in the world your site is being consumed primarily. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you're adhering to WCAG 2.2 level AA standards. So the biggest thing is color contrast, to make sure that your links and your background colors have sufficient color contrast so that people with visual impairment can see what's happening, to see that that's a link. As it also pertains to color, you got to make sure that any of your button styles or any of your hover states have really strong effects or some kind of a dynamic color contrast between the resting state, the hover state, and the click state. We see all too often that maybe just the text changes in a hover state. So you got to make sure that there's really proper color contrast there for that. Your headings, so your heading tags, H1 through H6, they have different sizes or fonts. They have to be in chronological order on the web page for screen readers. If you don't have that set up properly, it will cause confusion with people who are using screen readers. If you're using icons, they need to be paired with text unless it's a universal icon that we all, like the Ghostbusters cross out type thing. That's a universal icon. But a lot of people use custom icons, and don't make people guess. There needs to be some text along with that so people can understand what that link is going to. For responsive design, make sure that your touch targets are sufficient in terms of size. Targets should be at least 44 by 44 pixels so that when it goes down to that device, there's enough area there that someone can really touch that with acuity. And there's a whole other list of things to be mindful of when you're talking about accessibility. In our blog and our website, we've got many articles around this. And if you look at our past webinars, we also have webinars around website accessibility. So great question and a lot to be mindful of there. Jen, another question that came in beforehand, it simply said narrowing down color choices. One article said that bold colors and pastels were trending. So everything is trending. Any insight on best practices for default color usage?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I would say staying true to your brand is essential. There might be room to incorporate a fun accent color if your goal is to infuse more personality into your design. But while color trends can be exciting, constantly changing your palette to follow them just really isn't practical. So brand recognition definitely holds a greater value than just being trendy. So I would instead focus on just adapting how you're using your existing colors to keep your website fresh and engaging. So, and always just, as Jim just talked about, ensure efficient color contrast for accessibility, especially when presenting any of your content. So that's a fair question. But I wouldn't recommend changing your colors every time the trends change.
Right, right. Thank you for that. And thank you for that question. The question that came in this morning right before the webinar. How do you choose the optimal WordPress template to meet client and on-trend demands in 2025? Do you hear me?
I'm sorry, yeah, you cut out a little bit for me. Can you just repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. How do you choose the optimal WordPress template to meet client and on-trend demands in 2025?
Oh, yes. For WordPress, I don't like templates. They don't give you a lot of flexibility to work with them. And so I typically rely more on page builder tools like Beaver Buildy. I think Oxygen's like kind of a newer one. So again, templates can be really restricting, but these page builder tools really give you the flexibility you need to change your design without the constraints of a template.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, Beaver Builder, there's other ones you mentioned, and that gives you a lot of flexibility. That's a good choice. Another question that came in ahead of time. It simply stated, starting the planning process to overhaul our website. So I'll take that one. Jenna talked a little bit about user research and talking to users to make sure you understand what they're looking for. We always like to say that there's two views of a website. There's the business or organizational view, and then there's the user view. And oftentimes we see companies build their sites and present them to the world how they're organized internally. And that's not what users want. Users are, looking at websites to, what do I want to do? How do I do it? And can I do it here? So what we typically will recommend is you start out with a strategy and really validate your objectives as they exist today. Maybe your last website design was 3 years ago. So start to identify the objectives, goals, and KPIs of what your site is going to be, and ask yourself, what do you want your users to do? So you start by benchmarking the performance of your current website, looking at your analytics and your conversions, see how they're performing. Are users currently engaging in the way that you want them to? You also might want to place heat maps on your site well ahead of your redesign schedule to see how people are interacting with a page. How are they scrolling? What are they clicking on? Heat maps are visual representations of user behavior. And then, talk to your users and ask them what's working, what's not. What would you like to see? What content is missing? Go so far as to perhaps even conduct formal user testing, assigning important tasks to complete that align with your objectives and see how well people complete those tasks. So use the analytics data and user insights to close the gap on the current state of your site with where you want to go. And then you can start the wireframing and prototyping process for the user experience. Anything to add there, Jenna, on that?
No, I think that's sufficient.
Okay, I'm just looking at my list here to see if I've overlooked anything from the questions that came in ahead of time. I don't see anything else in the queue. And what would be drawbacks of using Wix for websites? That's a tough question to answer because it all depends on what the objective of the website is and how complex the website might be going forward. Wix is an interesting platform because recently over the summer, they started providing the ability to customize their templates, which gives you more flexibility than you might otherwise have with prefab templates. Some of your other, like Square and some of these other platforms, they give you beautiful templates. They look great, but we have found in our experiences that it only satisfies about 60 to 70% of what the users want to be able to do. You can't really modify those templates without a lot of customization. So again, it depends on what you want to do, and a platform like Wix or Square or somebody else might be appropriate if you just have a basic catalog or it's a kind of a brochureware site. You probably can build an effective site. But if you want to start looking at and building complex product catalog interactions with the ability to compare and do faceted search and all types of grids and product data. Again, what do your users want to see? Maybe they want to see more or different things than what the templates allow. So make sure that you're looking at a light strategy to figure out what your users want, and then you can pick the appropriate platform. We always like to say that when we go into a website strategy, we don't have a platform in mind. We're agnostic. We want to find out what the objectives are, what the users want, and then we're able to pick the platform. Looks like I got another question here. Maybe it was recalled. Nope. It looks like it was either answered or recalled. That's the last question we have. So before we wrap up today, we'd like to offer everybody in attendance a complimentary consultation to get any additional questions you may have about UX and UX design answered. So to request a consultation, visit us at nwsdigital.com/dnconsult and choose UX design from the consultation type field dropdown. Also, please join us on Thursday, January 9th, as we present your roadmap to digital marketing success in 2025. As always, all of our webinars are complimentary and they begin at 10 o'clock Central Time, 10 a.m. You can learn more and register at learn@northwoods.com. And if you're looking for more information on a specific topic or just want to stay up to date on the latest trends and developments in the constantly changing world of digital, please check out our blog, our recorded webinars, our YouTube channel, and we have a brand new vodcast that we've recently launched called Around the Campfire, featuring casual conversations with our experts on all things digital. We encourage you to check that out. Lastly, if you'd like to learn more about Northwoods and the many services we offer, from website design and development to custom software and digital marketing to digital advertising and marketing strategy, visit us at nwsdigital.com to explore our services details, read our client stories, and much, much more. After the webinar window closes here in a few minutes, a short survey will be available, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you could share your feedback on how we did this morning. So with that, I'd like to thank each of you and Jenna for joining me this morning. We look forward to seeing you again very soon, and have a great day and happy holidays.